Hello, everyone, and welcome to another LA Times Talk at the Sundance Film Festival. I'm Mark Olsen. I write about movies for the Times, and it's my pleasure to be leading this conversation today about the movie Nanny, which is premiering in the U.S. Dramatic Competition. And joining us today for the conversation, we have director and screenwriter Nikyatu Jusu, actors Ana Diop and Michelle Monaghan, and producer Nikkia Moulterie. Thank you to all for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. And now, Nikyatu, if you don't mind, instead of me sort of awkwardly trying to describe the movie, perhaps for folks who haven't seen the film yet, how do you describe it? Like, what to you is kind of the pitch version of the movie?
Okay, so Nanny is a dramatic piece with supernatural horror elements about a Senegalese nanny in New York City caring for a privileged child in Tribeca in the city in Manhattan. And as she prepares for the arrival of the child she left behind in Senegal, she is haunted by a presence that threatens to dismantle the American dream that she is pursuing.
And now the movie really plays in some ways as a straightforward drama, but then has these elements of folklore and horror. For you, how do you come to combine those elements? What is it that you liked about bringing those things together?
Well, most of my influences are non-American cinema. I love foreign cinema, and I think they get a little bit more flexibility in terms of cross-genre blending. For instance, Bong Joon-ho, Park Chan-wook, South Korean filmmakers, Lynn Ramsey, Andrea Arnold. The cinema that I have a lot of reverence for tends to be crossing multiple genres, whereas in America, we're very much pigeonholed into, is this horror? Is this drama? Is this a comedy? And I think once you're given that freedom, you're allowed to play and really be authentic to yourself as a filmmaker. So straddling those supernatural elements with the straightforward drama was relatively, it was a challenge, I won't lie, but I felt like I was given permission by the filmmakers who I really admire.
And Ana, could you talk a little bit about the sort of like the challenge of combining those elements in the storytelling for you and moving between the sort of more straightforward dramatic scenes and then these very sort of fantastical moments that happen in the movie? Was that a challenge for you, kind of moving between those different scenes?
Yeah, I would say just trying to play truthfully to the horror that Aisha is experiencing, what was difficult, and I just tried to approach it as straightforward as I could. Like, how would one respond in a circumstance like this? Do you think you're just losing your mind, or I just try to stay grounded with the story throughout. But I guess it was a challenge, but yeah, I just try to stay authentic and yeah.
And Michelle, could you tell me a little bit about what appealed to you about your character? That she's such a challenge, I would think, because on the one hand, she seems quite, kind at first, and then as the story unfolds, she kind of she's revealed as being more sort of selfish and oblivious to the sort of plight of people around her. And was that difficult? Like, what was it that appealed to you about the character?
I was so taken with this script when I read it. I actually had to really sit with it for a while because what I read was such a unique perspective. I think Nikyatu was presenting material that was really nuanced, with a really personal point of view that we haven't really seen before. And frankly, the role made me uncomfortable, and it made me uncomfortable in the most perfect way, and in a way that I wanted to mine this character with the help of Nikyatu and get more and more uncomfortable. There were facets of Amy that I think that we see a lot in this world, right? Where a lot of these facets exist. As a white privileged woman, I see it everywhere in my own experience, And I wanted to be able to, I guess, convey a character and humanize this woman. And I don't mean it in sort of the traditional sense that one sympathizes with a woman like this, that kind of perpetuates and benefits from white privilege. I didn't want to humanize her in that way. I wanted to humanize her in a way that would allow introspection, hopefully, from audiences that watch it, and perhaps see themselves in it, and have it confront our own biases and how we contribute and perpetuate. And I feel like that is Amy. And, Nikyatu wrote this, she wrote something so rich that was confronting for me. And to have the opportunity to find all of those things in between, to connect with, to examine, to see a woman present the best version of herself, and then to see her slowly, you see that she's really riddled with her own fears and her own biases. I just thought, I've not had the challenge of exploring a character like this, and I felt like it was really timely and important to do for me. And I think that, I think what's scary about this, and this is kind of going off on a tangent, I know I'm speaking, but we're talking about sort of the genre, and we look at sort of the external forces here that are very frightening and that we attribute to a particular genre. But sometimes the most, the scarier things are what's inside us, right? And I think what this film does so beautifully is it balances both of those things. We see these externals, really, really overt external things that are scary, and then we see the internal conflict. And that is oftentimes what permeates society and how we pay that forward and pass that on. And I found that to be super pervasive through the whole script and compelling. And I was super excited about the opportunity to get to explore it with Ana here and Nikyatu.
And
Can I just
Nikyatu,
pick up that really quick? I
yeah,
love what you
please.
said. I think that I remember feeling that Aisha, as the film goes on and as these supernatural elements and everything else start confronting her, trying to approach it from an acting standpoint and from a grounded standpoint, she just is becoming more confused, more and more and more and more confused. And everything that she had like painstakingly pieced together when we meet her and in planning to bring her son to the States just becomes challenged, and it becomes confusion to the point of terror. And I think that that's something we can all kind of relate to as we move in life, when we find ourselves in places where maybe we feel lost about even who we are, who we thought we've been all this time, or if the decisions we've made are right. And that is a confusion to the point of terror it can be, Anyway, so Michelle just made me think.
And Nikyatu, can you talk a little bit about exploring that dynamic between the nanny and her employers? I think the film is so sensitive to the power dynamics at play there, the way that they interact. How did you sort of come to explore that dynamic in the screenplay?
Well, as you can see, I have a very smart cast. Part of the way that I casted was I wanted people who were curious about their place in the world and who were self-aware. And I think what Michelle said about confronting the monster inside of us is really the backbone of this film. One of the filmmakers whom I really admire for creature creation is Guillermo del Toro. And he often talks about creating monsters. But the scariest part of horror and monster creation is not the monster itself. It's the monster that we are ignoring internally. Ask that question again, Mark. I don't even know what the question was. I went on a diatribe.
Just exploring that dynamic between Aisha and the family. I think the movie's so sensitive to kind of like how complex a relationship that can be. That they consider her part of the family. She's actually their employee. Like the movie just explores that so well.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is not a story that I'm an outsider looking in. My mother did a lot of domestic work growing up. I'm first-gen American, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, to a Sierra Leonean family. So I grew up in this African microcosm in the South, which is really a unique upbringing in America. But I often had to deal with my own resentment about the fact that my mother, with all her brilliance and her dreams and her goals, had to still put those things on the back burner in order to care for other and nurture other families. And so there was a lot of resentment from me. And I think that the creatures I created in this film helped me to make sense of what it means to have a marginalized mother in America who has to suppress her dreams in order to survive and thrive and maintain her household. And so, I mean, all of these things came very organically. Like I know all of these characters. I know Amy, I know Ana, Aisha, I know Morgan, Adam, I know Sinqua, Malik, I know Rose. All of these characters are people whom I've encountered in my real life. So these are people I've pulled from to create these characters.
And then, Ana, did you do any sort of research into domestic workers, or how did you sort of prepare for that aspect of the role?
I didn't need to. I was a babysitter and a nanny. When I grew up in Houston and then when I moved to LA. And my mother, like Nikyatu's mother, also was a domestic worker, and she was a nanny for 24 years up until last year. She retired, and so I also grew up with her taking care of other people's children and spending her days in these households that were more affluent than ours, and yeah, they do consider her part of the family, which is a curious thing. Because I found they never actually really knew who she was, really.
Right.
They only saw the side of her that she would show them. And anyways, but yeah, so no, I didn't need to do too much research because I'm very much of this world and understand it too.
And Nikkia, the world of the movie, the locations, the apartment that they live in, the places they go, it's so convincing. As a producer, can you talk a little bit about sort of like what went into sort of like helping to create that feeling of this really accurate depiction of that world?
Yeah, I mean, I think, even pre-pandemic, we really wanted to figure out how to shoot it in New York. And we had a brief period of trying to maybe switch gears given, what was going on in the world. But, it was really important to find authentic spaces. And we might have made a few compromises, but the apartment needed to look and feel like an affluent space in New York City. So like we leaned into Tribeca and we made it work. It was quite the production schedule puzzle, but I mean, I think, when you get a script like Nikyatu's, you just want to do it justice. And the locations are so integral to like building the world. So we really kept it authentic. We also found Kathleen's home in Harlem. Like it was just really important to the story and to the world that we were creating.
And Nikyatu, the movie has such a sort of this really sleek feeling to it, and I really like the way that it moves between the sort of the real world aspects of it and the fantasy aspects of it. And what was it like for you working with your creative team, your cinematographer, your production designer, to sort of really create that unity in the world? Especially some of the fantasy scenes are just so stunning visually.
Yeah, so I do want to really be clear about the fact that I'm only here because of my collaborators. Nikkia is truly a creative producer, and we really vetted our department heads. So we were lucky in the sense that these people chose us back because we chose some immensely talented people, from Rena Yang, our cinematographer, to Jonathan Guggenheim, who's also the art director for the latest iteration of Scream, to Charlize Antoinette, who did costume design for Judas and the Black Messiah. We just had really talented people on our team who chose us back. And so I think the hardest part of directing is having the discernment to choose talented people to collaborate with. And so the people we chose, again, thankfully chose us back, and weren't people who were just in service of the vision and just were being told what to do, but were selected because of the uniqueness of their lenses and the ideas that they brought to the table. So I value talented people who, one, get the vision, and two, have ideas of their own. And so in those regards, we were able to collaborate with people who understood the vision and just brought so much life to the set pieces that we created.
And what is it that you like about genre storytelling? Like for you, like having the genre elements of the movie, what do those sort of add to the storytelling for you?
You know, I wouldn't even think about it as adding. I would say that it's a really manipulative way to get people to care about things that they don't care about. And, you know, it's not pedantic. You know, people are quick to say, I felt like I was preached at. But with genre, you can use creatures and fantasy and folklore to hold people's hands to thinking about more important things. And this is why I value the filmmakers I value. I value Guillermo del Toro's ability to talk about the universal feeling of love and loneliness through Shape of Water, through this aquatic creature. I value Bong Joon-ho's ability to talk about the family unit through The Host and this creature that he created in The Host. So I'm essentially distracting people from feeling like they're being preached at through genre. Also, additionally, I think there's a lot of Black and African diasporic folklore that hasn't been tapped into in the American cinematic paradigm that I would like to introduce to the American audience.
And Michelle, Anna, the both of you have worked on, productions that I think are sort of much bigger than this one. Michelle, you've been involved in the Mission Impossible films. Movies kind of don't get any bigger. And Anna, your work on Titans. What is it like for you when you come to, an independent film, a film that's going to be coming to Sundance eventually? Is the dynamic different? Is your process different? Like, what is it like when you're working on, maybe a faster, smaller production? Michelle?
Well, my career started out really in independent film in New York City. And I remember telling my husband, aside from being just really inspired by the material that Nikyatu wrote, I was really excited to get back to my roots because I just love the New York filmmaking community. And there's just something so great about digging deep and everybody being on kind of a level playing field. It's like we were there. I love Nikyatu's, to use her words, she's like, people chose us back. And that really is independent filmmaking at its heart, right? It's like you get the material, it either speaks to you or it doesn't. And if you say yes, then you're fully invested in it because you're there for the art and you're there to share something together and to collaborate together. So we absolutely had this on this film. We actually had time to rehearse, which is very unusual, even on big studio projects nowadays. But the thing that also really stuck out to me, and it's something that I really noted, was that this was the first time in 20 years that I have worked on such a diverse set. I would be remiss not to say that this was a very woman-led show, from Nikyatu, from Nikkia, the other producers, to our camera operators, to our DP, to our hair and makeup teams, to our AD teams. This was very unusual. And our crew looked like the rest of the world. When you walk down the street and you see a diverse community, that was reflected on our set. And I, in 20 years, have never had that experience. So I want to acknowledge the people that made that happen. And we need to see more of that. And that was, you would think that you would see that in independent filmmaking, but you rarely do. And so that was a really important part of this process that I took with me.
And Ana, what was it like for you in working on a project of this scale compared to the work you'd been doing on Titans?
Yeah, to be honest, there was like a freedom and a play to it that I really, really, really appreciated. Nikyatu was really encouraging of us to improvise when it made sense and to add lines or omit lines, and do whatever felt most authentic. And I keep using that word authentic because she was always using it early on. And I was like, God, I love her. I love that she's just so, always doubling down on that. Like she's very committed to that. And so, the work I do on Titans, it's authentic in a different way. We're superheroes and superpowers and we're in super suits. And so, it's a different world completely. And so it was like a breath of fresh air. It was just really nice to be able to come to do something so grounded and honest and brutal in a lot of ways, in its honesty and in its humanity. And also I got to play a Senegalese character, and I haven't been able to do that. And I am of Senegalese descent. And so that meant everything to me. And I remember I wrote in my journal years ago, I was like, one day I'm going to make a film that tells my mom's story. And so, yeah, this film was everything to me. It's everything to me.
And Nikkia, can you talk a little bit about your sort of collaboration with Nikyatu? I know the two of you I know you've worked at least on one short film together, and I'm just wondering what that sort of collaboration has been like as it's grown, and especially moving on to make a feature together.
Yeah, it's been such a generous and kind of fruitful, partnership. Nikyatu is really generous and collaborative in the real sense. You come to the table, she wants to work with you. She doesn't want to talk at you. And, that's rare. She's not a dictator. She's a director. And it's just been so fun. She tells the stories that, I've been yearning for. Like, she's also a writer, director, right? And so, as far as Danny's concerned, funny enough, when we first met, we both were toiling around this idea. And, she writes really rich, complex worlds. And we got to a point where we needed to kind of figure out what can we do first, because you write these amazing things. And for the first one out, like, what feels tenable? And so, Nanny for us was just the one that felt like could go like now, like it could go before all of the other amazing stories she was building on. And so, it's just so exciting to work with her, and it's just, I can't wait to do the next one. There's no one writing like her right now. Like, it's really exciting to be at the genesis,
And Nikyatu, you mentioned...
Feel so loved, Mark. Yes.
It is. You should. But this with
and Ana can wild. Yeah, but you're so.
I love you guys back.
Right.
This is what makes it so rich, Michelle, Ana, and Nikkia. Like, I love y'all
energy
so much.
Every day
I'm
on
sad
set.
that we're not in person.
I know. She loves the process. I think Nikkia said that she is a collaborator in the true sense, and she loves the process. And Ana can attest to this. Like, Nikyatu gets giddy. Like, she gets giddy and she watches it. She appreciates the actor. She appreciates, every aspect of the film, the filmmaking, from the DP setting up the shot and seeing it for the first time, going, oh my God, that's so cool, to, the clothes, she would get excited about every part of it. And so, the short of that is everybody felt appreciated. But when you're in that energy, you can't help but reflect that back, And so despite the circumstances of being in that August heat in New York City, which we all know is like,
Oh my
in a
God,
heat
it
of
was hot.
pandemic, we had a lot of fun. Like this was, and it's heavy material, and we had a lot of fun. And, it was because, there's a real filmmaker here that loves storytelling.
Yeah, so true.
And Nikyatu, you mentioned the folklore aspect of the story earlier, and I want to ask you more about that. I mean, how did you sort of come to weave the folklore specifically into the story? And like, how did you sort of land on those specific sort of stories that you were drawing from?
Again, there's so much folklore to tap into. First, I want to thank you three also for the love, because I'm really sad that we're not in person together. I was really looking forward to it. Sundance made the right choice, in a pandemic, but I'm missing the experience of this community in person. And so I'm really touched by these words. But Anansi and Mami Wata are two figures who are very prominent in the African diaspora. And so it was relatively easy to extract like the knowledge and the research and the information about what these figures meant to African people and Black people pre-colonialism, because there's not a lot of literature that explores resistance before colonization, or even just oral tradition and the stories we passed on verbally. And so I always love a chaos agent, and Anansi represents that. There are trickster figures in almost every Black and Brown culture, Native Americans, Indigenous cultures, African diasporic cultures, Black American cultures, that are extensions of enslavement, Brer Rabbit. Like, there are different names for these figures. And so incorporating Anansi and Mami Wata into the American horror paradigm is one of my many goals in terms of figuring out how to make the folklore that we haven't touched become a little bit more mainstream.
And then, Ana, as your character, she herself is a mother, and it's one of the things I enjoyed so much in the story. Like, whenever she says to someone else that she's a mother, the person she says it to is always surprised. Like, people haven't really thought about her so often. And can you talk a little bit about that aspect of the character and how it maybe impacted your portrayal?
Yeah, when Aisha does show up in these spaces, in Amy's world, she has to shut down, and she has to shut down a lot of who she is, and in order to be in these spaces and to do the job that they've hired her to do. And I've seen my mom do it. I saw my mom do it for so long. And I was telling this story the other day about my mom worked for this family for 8 years. And one Christmas, they gave her this gift. And it was one of those carbonated soda maker things. And my mom has never, she has not once used it. It's not, and it has nothing to do with her, but it just showed me how little they knew of her after 8 years, that's what they, and it was lovely of them to give her a gift and whatever, but it just, Aisha too, she's not fully, she can't fully be herself in these spaces, and she knows what she's there for, and she knows what they want her there for. And so she shuts down what she needs to shut down in order to do what she's there to do, which is survive, make a living, get out. So yeah, that's how I kind of approach that.
Michelle, I think it's a couple times in the story, your character, you're interacting with Ana, and you say, what it's like. And it's like you're trying to connect with her, but also completely oblivious to like the real differences between the lives these two women are living. It's like such a striking line the couple times that it comes up. Like, what to you was that sort of dynamic like between, you know, your character and Aisha?
Well, I think, yeah, you're right. There are those elements where she's just trying to ingratiate herself or try to find those, I guess, those commonalities to make her feel more comfortable and like they're connected. But the reality is that they're both two very different people. What I found to be really interesting is that they have this very complicated dynamic in the sense that they both, in their own way, need each other to essentially survive in the world. Albeit one of the woman's, Ana's characters, Aisha's sacrifices are much greater. And so I found that those, and again, it's so astutely wrote by Nikyatu, are these sort of the ways in which she tries to ingratiate herself to Aisha's character is, you know, they're offensive. You know, they're what we call and know now today to be microaggressions. You know, and she's not aware of these things. She would never classify herself as having these biases, being racist, but these are all ways in which she's perpetuating these things. And so I thought that, you know, the way that she created this dynamic between these two characters was really poignant, allowed for like this really poignant messaging and not having to sacrifice, like you said, entertaining people. I mean, you're so smart, Nikyatu, about how you're saying, you know, you can, you're not diluting the messaging or, you know, trying to force feed anything. You're just sort of, you're saying, okay, well, let's create something really, really entertaining. And we can also, you know, educate people and sort of, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. And so I found that at every point we were sort of doing that in all the different relationships. You know, I thought I just really have to comment on the chemistry between you and Sinqua. Those characters, oh my gosh, it was just so incredible just watching their dynamic and to hear their respective stories, you know, and just, you know, even that beat we're talking about parenthood and things like that. And just that beat when you're in the lobby and you see him with his son and we're just exploring what it means to walk through life as a parent, to be in service of, and I'm going to steal your words from your director's statement, actually, when I say this, Nikyatu, but it was something that stuck with me. And I've told her over and over and over again, this line got me, but you know, immigrants and marginalized people being in the service of the upward mobility of white families. And so I think we tackle this so much in this script. And I found it to just be really, really important. And I just loved getting to do it with Ana.
And Nikyatu, can you talk a bit more about the sort of the way in which you explore what Michelle was talking about there, those microaggressions and just the small details of what some of those dynamics are like?
Well, first of all, I'm really impressed with these answers. Like, this is the first time I think Ana, Nikkia, and Michelle are together on a panel, and I continue to be excited about the fact that I chose people and they chose me back who really get it. So that makes me feel really good because Michelle's really taking a deep dive into a lot of this stuff. I needed someone brave for Amy, and I got that. But yes, Mark, so you want to know more about the microaggressions? Yeah,
because it seems like something would be difficult because it's a subtle thing, so it's a difficult thing to write. So I'm just curious, like, how you sort of came to explore that in the screenplay.
You know what? It wasn't difficult for me to write because I had an interview earlier where I said that I've been in predominantly white spaces since middle school. And so a part of survival for marginalized people who are thrust into these spaces as a path to excellence is that you have to understand whiteness more than white people understand their own whiteness.
Wow.
And so I harnessed that skill starting, I would say it was concretized in middle school when I had like a drama teacher, this really beautiful, gorgeous, by white standards, delicate, pale, thin drama teacher, this white woman at this Christian high school, private high school in Georgia. And I made her cry. Because she confronted me about something. I was like in 8th grade. She confronted me about something, a lie she thought I told, and she felt like I was being aggressive. And I was like, that started to concretize my realization that even as a Black child, I was being portrayed as someone who was aggressive and who was just belligerent for no reason by white adults. And so I just started to learn about these different ways that your humanity is chipped away at without having to hear the N-word, without being able to quantify that this is racism. You know, you start to realize these are these little interactions that inform you about how people perceive your place in the world. And so, you know, went to Duke undergrad, went to NYU grad film. I've just always been in these predominantly white spaces and been an observer of what that means for myself as a Black woman in these spaces and what it means in general. And so I think that I have a good memorization of what these microaggressions can look like that accumulate into systematic issues. Because one thing that I got in the labs that I was a part of, I had some mentors who really got it. But I had a handful of white women mentors who are working screenwriters and working filmmakers in the industry who were projecting their resistance to Amy into their notes. And so I had to separate the notes that were best for the film versus I'm having a knee-jerk reaction to the way that you're portraying my white womanhood in this film. So, I mean, it's something that has been accrued over time and that I've learned to figure out. But I understand for so many marginalized filmmakers coming into this industry, if you're getting notes that you have to disseminate between the person's POV versus notes that really fulfill the mastery of your film, you will struggle to decide what notes make sense for the film versus what notes are coming through a specific lens. Yeah.
I've never heard anyone put that quite that way before. The sort of struggle to like even understand the feedback you're getting, and that you have to sort of, I don't want to say translate, but you have to come to understand where it's really coming from. Like that's a difficult path to navigate, I'm sure.
Yeah. Nikkia's laughing because she knows some of the notes we've gotten, and it's like, that's you reacting to seeing yourself, you know, reflected back versus a note that is like, this doesn't serve the journey of the protagonist. You're distracted by the genre elements. Those are two different sets of notes.
And we're sort of running out of time, and we're gonna take a question that we got from readers of the LA Times entertainment feed on Twitter, and the question for that, Nikyatu, I'll address this to you. What's your storytelling advice? Like, what to someone who's like trying to become a storyteller? What would be your main advice?
You know what I would say? So I went to NYU, and I was in school with people who had a lot more resources and a lot more money than I did, a lot more connections. But when I stayed true to the authenticity of the stories that only I could tell, that's when I started to really shine in the program. And so regardless of how intimidating it's an expensive art form. It's the most expensive art form that exists, especially in a paradigm that is filmmaking and business based. But I will say the more true you stay and authentic to the stories only you can tell, the more that your stories will shine. So not trying to fit in with what you think is a mainstream or a remix of Get Out or a remix of what is popular right now, but trying to tap into who you are and your culture and the things that you can't shake. I think it's really important to stay true to those stories.
And Nikkia, would you have any storytelling advice for young storytellers?
One protagonist, one location. No, I'm joking.
No children.
Just like when
no kids, no vehicle.
In the genesis of your career, just remember, like, you're not always going to have cash as currency. It's going to definitely need to be, your community is also currency. So really look around you and just try to figure out who your tribe is, because it's such a collaborative art form. You're going to need someone other than yourself. So just, look to your community in the beginning to kind of get your feet wet, because you're going to need them.
Amen.
Well, it seems like a wonderful place for us to wrap this up. Nikkia Moulterie, Michelle Monaghan, Ana Diop, and Nikyatu Jusu, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation about Nanny. For the Los Angeles Times, I'm Mark Olsen.